What's going on, everybody? RJ Ochoa here from SB Nation's bloggingtheboys.com. Hope all is well wherever you are. We hope you're happy, safe, healthy, and that you're still reeling in excitement over the Dallas Cowboys making two free agent moves. That's right. Last Friday, the Dallas Cowboys made two signings official. They officially brought back kicker Lareem Hairulahu, who was a part of the team last year, a part of the team that beat the Atlanta Falcons, attempted 5 extra points, made all 5 of them. He's now back to present some kicking competition for rookie undrafted free agent Jonathan Garibay, but he was not the only player who the Dallas Cowboys signed on Friday. In fact, they brought in a new linebacker in Christian Sam to replace Devontae Bond, who went on injured reserve. Now, those are the first 2 free agent signings, to be very technical and very literal, since April 19th. Why is April 19th important? Why is April 19th specifically important? Well, you may have seen, I tweeted about this over the weekend. April 19th is one of the days that Stephen Jones, Dallas Cowboys EVP, took to the radio airwaves of 105.3 The Fan and spoke about the state of the team and, at the time, what was the lead up to the NFL draft. Obviously, we know the players who the Cowboys drafted since then. They did us a favor and also showed us how they ranked their players afterwards. But there's a quote that I want to talk about here today, which is why we've all gathered around the proverbial campfire, and it comes from Stephen Jones. Let's put it up on the screen here. Stephen Jones said, "We're not done yet in free agency." As you can see, the tweet from Calvin Watkins, covers the Cowboys for the Dallas Morning News, does a great job. Jones also tells 105.3 The Fan the Cowboys will draft the best player on their board. This is not about that, to be very clear, but we know the Cowboys did not do that, again, per the board that they showed us. So, 2 different things in there. But we're here today to talk about the line about free agency. Stephen Jones, again, who is tasked with helping build the Dallas Cowboys roster, helping the Dallas Cowboys roster compete, helping the Dallas Cowboys roster compete for Super Bowls, as we all want, said, we're not done yet in free agency. So again, this was April 19th, as you can see the date at the bottom of that tweet. I'm putting this video together for you on July 10th, and it's mid-July at this point, right? It's almost July 19th. We're about a week shy, so it's been about 3 months. We're going to round up here, call it 3 months, 90 days, however you want to look at this. And the Dallas Cowboys have made 2 free agent signings. 2. And we're talking about veteran free agents here. Obviously, they have their class of undrafted free agents, which includes the aforementioned Jonathan Garibay. But 2 free agents. We're not done yet, but 2 free agents. I'm going to be totally honest with you. I wanted to put together, as a part of our slideshow here that we use when we put these videos together, I wanted to put together a list of all the veteran free agents who have been signed by different NFL teams since April 19th. But it was actually a little bit too tedious, to be honest with you. It was 14 different slides I would have had to have put together because there have been that many. The 14th would have featured the signings of Lareem Hairulahu and Christian Sam, which again just happened a couple of days ago. So Stephen Jones said that the Dallas Cowboys were not done in free agency. This is the same brain trust, the same team that allegedly, according to Von Miller, offered the reigning Super Bowl champion, 2-time Super Bowl champion, once upon a time a Super Bowl MVP, the same contract that they offered Randy Gregory. All right, we did a video here on our channel. Please do subscribe to the Blog of the Boys YouTube channel about how the Cowboys were in the mix with Von Miller. We did that last week, and how they reportedly made the same offer for Von they did Randy. And look, I'm not here to talk about Von Miller. I'm fine. I think you're fine that the Cowboys did not pay him what the Buffalo Bills did. Nobody's here to relitigate that discussion. I think all of our issue is that the Cowboys were clearly willing to hand that money out to someone, right? Whether it was Randy Gregory and or Von Miller. So where is that money? Why have they not handed it out to anybody over the course of free agency? Again, they've brought in 2 players just in the last few days since Stephen Jones said this. But I want to be fair to Stephen because I always want to be fair to anybody or everybody and everybody. And I want to play you the full quote so that we can properly get context for what Stephen said. You can properly get context because sometimes that can be lost when you read a line in a tweet. So Stephen Jones was on the KNC Masterpiece on 105.3 The Fan. This was April 19th, 2022. I encourage you to watch that whole interview. It's really interesting to kind of look back on, again, almost 3 months later. But this is the clip in question.
Is this the most exhausting offseason that you can recall for yourself and for the Cowboys specifically?
Yeah, I think the biggest reason, I wouldn't call it exhausting. I just call it, hey, it's a challenge. It's work. It's a lot that went into it, mainly because of the unique situation of the last 2 years with the pandemic and how it affected the salary cap in terms of not having its natural, if you will, increase each year. You weren't able to project that. You knew that the cap was not going to be naturally going up as you normally build into your contracts. So consequently, we had to really step back and be conservative, if you will, in terms of signing extensions to players. The other thing that played into that for us, obviously, was a new coaching staff with Coach McCarthy coming in. You want to make sure that the players that you have on the roster, how they're playing, how they fit the schemes, both offensively, defensively, and special teams, how they're going to fit in under the new staff. Obviously, unfortunately, we had to make a quick change on defense, so we had two different coordinators there in 2 years. So there were some challenges that aren't normally there, which kept us from signing extensions to players we might normally would have, as well as having the challenge of having to make some tough decisions because the cap didn't necessarily project as high as we would have thought pre-pandemic. And so therein lied the challenges that we had to work through. So it did create, one of our biggest, I think probably our biggest free agent class, especially players that we feel like were really good football players. So that was our challenge out there. We feel like we did do a good job with it in terms of re-signing, for the most part, the players that we wanted and felt like we could keep under the current salary cap environment. And I do think that we were able to fill, for the most part, we're not done yet in free agency. We'll see what opportunities come up out there, but we feel like we can go into the draft pure again and pick the best players on our board.
So there you go. It's the part of the very end where Steven notes that the Cowboys are not done yet. A big part of the entire spiel there was Steven kind of setting that point up and talking about how the onset of the pandemic 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, was what kind of put the Cowboys behind the eight ball, so to speak. They had to kind of deal with that, the ramifications of that, the financial ramifications of that, obviously. And look, obviously that's a factor that the whole world had to deal with. But if we look at NFL teams since then, there are a number that have managed to obviously exist and thrive throughout the pandemic time that we are still currently living in. You look at, for example, off the top of my head, the Los Angeles Chargers. The LA Chargers have been all involved in free agency and trading for players and things like that. They have a new head coach. Stephen Jones cites the hiring of Mike McCarthy, which was obviously right before the pandemic began in 2020. I mean, as a challenge, the Cowboys had to figure things out. The Chargers have not had that difficulty. The Chargers hired Brandon Staley before to the 2021 season and still are managing to figure things out. And part of that is because they have a quarterback on a rookie contract in Justin Herbert and are taking advantage of that, by the way, in the way that the Dallas Cowboys did not do so with Dak Prescott. You look at the Philadelphia Eagles, right? The Philadelphia Eagles have a new head coach, or a coach that is now entering his second season in Nick Sirianni, same coaching class as Brandon Staley in LA. The Eagles have been all sorts of involved in free agency. And I don't think any of us are sitting here and complaining or whatever about free agency specifically. You have to go sign free agents, blah, blah, blah. Okay, fine, but trade for players, be active, be creative. This isn't just bring in veteran player X and sign them. That's not the only thing we're screaming needs to happen. There are multiple creative ways and avenues to build your team, to find new talent, avenues and ways that teams like the Chargers and the Eagles have explored. And it just kind of feels like the Cowboys haven't done that. And to use these things as the reasons why, the new head coaching staff and all these sorts of things, the extensions and whatnot. We've seen teams navigate all sorts of situations over the last 2 years. Again, teams trading for superstar quarterbacks, teams trading for different players, all sorts of wide receivers moving this offseason, including the Cowboys shipping away Amari Cooper, big-time free agents being signed by different teams, including the reigning world champion Los Angeles Rams. All these other teams have found ways to thrive in the environment that we now live in that began 2.5 years ago. And the Cowboys are still kind of using this as a bit of an excuse as to why they have not been able to be more creative from a free agent or roster creativity standpoint. And ultimately here, I'm not making this video, putting this together to just, have everybody grab our pitchforks here, but I think it's important that we remember these words. Stephen Jones said 3 months ago that the Dallas Cowboys were not done in free agency. So what did he have in mind? Stephen Jones, what did you have in mind? What was the plan in that moment when you said that you were not done? Now, granted, the 2022 NFL draft had not happened at that point in time, so perhaps the Cowboys feel like whatever positional needs they would have addressed in free agency were addressed throughout the draft and undrafted free agency. But still, if you had players in mind that you were considering signing, why haven't you done that? Especially when we know beyond a shadow of a doubt that you offered one contract to two different players, allegedly, in Randy Gregory and Von Miller. I almost said Micah Parsons. It's a whole thing. Anyway, that is where we're at, is Stephen Jones said this, that the Dallas Cowboys were not done in free agency. We have seen them sign 2 veteran free agents since then. 2. All right. If we could sit here, it would be one thing if we could sit here and look at, and again, I'm not saying that, because the Cowboys are at their max from a roster standpoint, right? But, if we could sit here and look at legitimate and sizable moves and efforts that the Cowboys had made in free agency, it's not a quantitative sort of discussion, right? We're not saying you have to have 10 or 15 or whatever would-be veteran free agent acquisitions, but you said you were not done, only to 3 months later when you first made a move. The first player, by the way, who the Dallas Cowboys brought back, granted it took a week to materialize, but the first technically veteran free agent who the Dallas Cowboys brought in since those comments from Stephen Jones was kicker Lareem Hairulahu, who was on the team last year. So it's not even a, I know that's kind of a cheating, little bit of a loophole sort of thing, but that's not even a real veteran acquisition. Yes, he spent time with the Carolina Panthers, so he's technically coming from a different team, but he was on your team last year. It's not new blood you're bringing in. They did bring in Christian Sam, who obviously was drafted by the Patriots and spent some time in the USFL, but that was the first bit of gold the Cowboys struck, to use some loose terminology here, was 3 months later. The first player that they brought back was a kicker who was on their roster a year ago. I think it's important that we remember these words, because as Cowboys fans, we want this team to succeed. We want to see them win. We want to see them try to win. And it doesn't feel like, if you're going to tell us that you're not done in free agency, if the first thing you did wasn't until 3 months later and was a kicker who was on your team last year, that action doesn't measure up with the promise that Stephen Jones gave when he appeared on 105 through the Fan back on April 19th, 2022. Again, I encourage you, go listen to that whole interview. It's really interesting, again, now knowing what the Cowboys did from a draft standpoint. That's the other part of things, is that Stephen, like I said at the very beginning, said that the Cowboys were going to stick to their draft board, which we know that they didn't. And the only reason we know that is because of their own choice. They told us and showed us. So just, interesting discussion to have. What do you think about Stephen Jones? The comments from 3 months ago. We would love to hear what you have to say. My name is RJ Ochoa. You can hit me up on Twitter or Instagram at RJ Ochoa, on TikTok at RJ.Ochoa. If email is more your speed, you can hit me up at RJ.Ochoa@SBNation.com. You can always leave a comment down below. We'll get to those as well. But training camp starts in a couple of weeks. Looking forward to it. Our training camp preview series rolls on here on the Blog of the Boys YouTube channel. Please do subscribe. Thanks a lot. We'll see you next time.